In 1519, the early European exploration of the faraway land called America began. At this time, there were no country called Germany, only German states. People speaking the German language in North and Central Europe lived in many different states that were part of a loose confederation called the Holy Roman Empire, ruled by Charles V, the Holy Roman Emperor. A series of religious wars between Catholics and Lutheran states began in the year 1555. After much bloodshed, Charles V finally agreed to allow the rulers of each German state to choose the religion of his subjects. In 1618, Ferdinand II, a devout Catholic, became the Holy Roman Emperor. He enacted a new constitution proclaiming Catholicism as the sole religion, and German was admitted along with Czech as the official language. Some of Ferdinand's subjects started a rebellion that was supported by the ruler of a German state called the Palatinate. Ferdinand responded quickly to his political and religious challenges by sending troops to crush the rebellion. This marks the beginning of the terrible 30-year war. The long and bloody conflict that ensued drew in the other European powers. Almost 1/3 of the German population died in this 30-year conflict. At long last, in 1648, the 30-year war came to an end with what was called the Peace of Westphalia. This peace agreement left the German states even weaker and more divided than ever before. There were now more than 300 struggling Germanies. During this time, some 13 German families from the town of Krefeld on the Lower Rhine immigrated to the United States with the offering of religious freedom and farmland from Mr. William Penn. On October 6, 1683, they arrived in Philadelphia on the sail ship Concord. This spawned the establishment of Germantown, Pennsylvania. About 50 years later, in 1702, the Queen Anne's War went on intermittently between Britain and France. King Louis XIV attacked some of Britain's German allies, devastating much of the Rhineland. Some 13,000 Rhinelanders immigrated to England. The British established camps around London for the Protestants, while sending some 3,500 Catholics back to the Rhineland. The camps created many problems. For example, the London poor were so resentful that foreigners were getting aid that they attacked the camps. The British government reacted by shipping over 3,800 Rhinelanders to Ireland and 3,000 to New York. Most of the immigrants who survived the journey to New York eventually made their way to Pennsylvania. It was during this period that Germany began the long process of unification under the leadership of several kings. The state of Prussia seized parts of Poland. At the time, Prussia was the largest and most powerful German state, with the exception of Austria. German was introduced as the language of administration, and at the same time German replaced Latin at the University of Prague and most of the elementary schools. During this 16-year period, Napoleon Bonaparte seized power in France and defeated Austria, finally bringing the Holy Roman Empire to an end after years of the Napoleonic Wars. The victors met to redraw the map of Europe and establish a German confederation. The hundreds of German states were now consolidated to 39. Otto von Bismarck, Prime Minister of Prussia, and King William I defeated the Austrians during the Franco-Prussian War. After his decisive victory, Bismarck decided that Austria would be excluded from the united Germany that he dreamed of. He used his diplomatic skills to persuade the rulers of other German states to set aside their differences and unite into a German empire. In January of 1871, King William accepted the title Emperor of Germany. Now, for the first time, Germany was one nation.
Hello, I'm Gail Miller. Up until recently, I didn't think much about my heritage. I knew that a long time ago, my family immigrated to America from Germany, and I vaguely remember stories my relatives told me, but that was about the extent of it. The German and American cultures have become so deeply blended in the United States that we are not aware of our own origin. Well, I'm happy to report that I am the 6th generation of a family that originated in the village of Wetteren, Kingdom of Bohemia, which we can date back as far as 1804. What I've become the most curious to know about my ancestors is, what was it like in Germany in 1804? How did they get to America, and why did they want to leave? Some of our oldest documents in the native German language supplied us with information about them. How the Maier name was spelled, for instance. It was spelled differently on various different documents like marriage licenses and birth certificates. I guess what mystifies me the most is that they knew that it was spelled incorrectly, but yet they made no attempt to change it. Through our research, we discovered many exciting and interesting things about our European ancestors, as well as the country they came from. The German heritage runs very deep in Texas. I felt as if my heritage was slipping away from me. My son Chad and his cousins know very little about our family. I didn't want them to ever forget. I hope this document will help preserve our history and be something that he can share with his children and you can share with your own families for many generations to come. The village of Wetteren was one of the villages that formed the Kingdom of Bohemia. Bohemia is a historic Central European country with a rich history bounded on the south by Austria, the west by Bavaria, the north by Saxony and Lusatia, and on the east by Silesia and Moravia. Mariana Pecho, short for Pecheman, was born in the village of Wetteren in 1803. Wenzel Fink was born in Wetteren in 1804. Our family tree starts with Wenzel and Mariana. Wenzel, a farmer by trade, married Mariana on September 16th in 1828, 8 days after his birthday. They had 8 children. Simon, born in 1830, Johann, born in 1832, Franz, 1834, Maria, 1836, Anton, 1838, Herafina Teresa, 1840, Genovefa, 1842, Josefa, 1846. Their home was a house number 4 in Wetteren. Simon, Franz, Anton, and Josefa Fink did not marry and had no children. Johann Fink married Herafina Galliel on September 2nd, 1856. They had no children. Maria Fink married Franz Bergstrand on May 20th, 1856. They too had no children. Herafina Fink married Franz Wagner on July 7th, 1863. Together they purchased a building, house number 28. The bottom floor was a restaurant and meat market. The second floor was the family living quarters, and the third floor was apartment rentals. Herafina and Franz Wagner had 5 children, 2 boys, Frank and Herman, and 3 girls, Anna, my grandmother, Maria, and Teresa. We don't know for certain if this house was the birthplace of all 5 of their children, but we do know that Anna was born there because of a document dated July 15, 1882, which had house number 28 as place of residence. We do know for certain that as a child, Anna worked in the family restaurant. This beautiful church was built in 1278. It is the St. Vitus Catholic Church in Krummau, where Anna was baptized. The last child of Wenzel and Mariana Fink to marry was Genovefa. She married Simon Meyer on February the 10th, 1863. Simon was the son of Joseph Meyer and Teresa Nee Tomodol. Their home was house number 2 in Wetteren. Simon was baptized a Catholic in the Holy Saints Church in Krummau. Simon and Genoveva had one child, a son they named Johann. He was born on January the 15th, 1864. Johann, my grandfather, was baptized in St. Vitus Church, the same church as his mother Genoveva and his cousin Anna. Hermann Wagner, Anna's brother, donated land in Wetteren so that this church could be built. A magnificent stained glass window was also made possible by a donation from Hermann. Friedrich Ernst was the first documented German in Texas. He proudly wrote back to his friends in Bohemia about prosperity, religious freedom, and farmland. One part of his letter boasted, "The state of Texas lies in the south of the Gulf of Mexico. The soil needs no fertilizer. There is no winter. It's almost like March in Europe. Bees, birds, and butterflies are the whole winter here. Principal products are tobacco, rice, indigo, and sweet potatoes. Wild prey such as deer, bears, raccoons, wild turkey, and geese, all in large quantities. Free hunting and fishing." On July 15, 1882, Simon and Genoveva Meyer submitted a petition for the intention to immigrate to the United States of America and to take with them their son, Johann, and their 12-year-old niece, Anna, daughter of Herafina and Franz Wagner. The petition reads as follows: Simon and Genoveva are obliged to pay for Anna's passage to the United States and to educate and raise her as their own until she marries or can take care of herself. Herafina and Franz accept this proposal and agree to give a total of 300 gulden to them no later than December the 31st, 1882. This money is from her inheritance and to help Simon and Genoveva to defray expenses. Once the immigration visas had been obtained by all members, it was time to pack as much as they could carry, say their goodbyes, and leave family and friends. In 1882, most German ports became major departure points. Boarding houses or depots were available for lodging until it was time to depart. However, immigrants were not totally safe and were preyed upon by swindlers who were intent on taking their savings. The problem was so serious that the mayor of Minnesota, which had a growing German population, set a representative to investigate the safety of immigrants traveling to the U.S. and to recruit new settlers. Charitable organizations sometimes supply travelers with maps of U.S. railroad lines and a list of German settlements where they would be welcomed. Wisconsin, as well as other states, provided guidebooks encouraging immigrants to consider them. The journey to America was uncomfortable at best and deadly at worst. Conditions of travel varied from the cheapest way possible, which was in the steerage, to bunks that were 4 room and stacked on top of each other. Some slept on mattresses, and some slept on sacks of straw. Regardless, there was poor ventilation, crowded conditions, sickness, and disease. The time it took to cross the Atlantic depended greatly on the time of year and weather. It could easily take as long as 6 weeks. Some ships sank at sea. Many times these facts were hidden so future immigrants wouldn't be discouraged. Wilhelm Burkert, an immigrant who kept a log on his journey, wrote, "We got on a nice small steamship, and in 2 hours we were out of the river. But we were met by a big ship like you can't imagine. We were all transferred. Everyone jumped for a mattress. It took me an hour to find my tinware. When I found it, I carried it to my sleeping place. But before I realized it, my chamber pot and bottle of water was stolen. I reported it, but he told me to steal someone else's. I took one for myself. Every day, rice, soup, and potatoes. I believe they boil that stuff in seawater. It made me so sick. I ate nothing and drank nothing." This map indicates where and America are in relationship to each other. New York City is the shortest route to land. New York's harbor had greeted more than 1 million German immigrants by 1882. Germans were the largest group in American immigration history to include all three major Western religions, Catholicism, Protestantism, and Judaism. Before the anchor was cast, immigrants would pay their fare for the trip. Those that could not would enter into a contract in which they would agree to deliberately be sold to a U.S. purchaser. This was called an indenture. They were indentured servants. Why did they agree to this bargain? Many people felt that being a servant for 3 years to pay off their fare of $80 was well worth it. Some indenturers would make them apprentices where they could learn a trade. After all, they would be free in 3 years to do as they wished. Castle Gardens was located on an island off the southern tip of Manhattan Island. It had formerly been a theater which seated 6,000 people. At the time when the Meyer family arrived, it was an immigrant receiving station. Inside, everyone was screened for any diseases and could obtain medical care. Information was given about how to find jobs and lodging. Their gulden was changed into American currency. Directions were given to the New York German Society if they needed someone who could speak German to advise them on the best routes they would take them to their final destination. Not only were there thieves in Germany, but America as well. They were supplied with as much information as possible before being sent on their way. Castle Gardens kept a register of all immigrants passing through its doors for census documentation. It was 1882. Genevieve, Johann, Simon, and Anna were in New York City. What was it like when they walked out the door at Castle Gardens? What was going on in New York at the time? What did it look like? It must have been both exciting and frightening at the same time. Here they were in a new and strange land with different cultures and a language they didn't understand. These photographs give us some insight of what it was like. We have no documentation to tell us exactly when the Meyer family arrived in St. Paul. We can only assume that it was late 1882 or early 1883. The lower landing and Union Depot served as the major arrival and departure points for steamships and railroads. St. Paul was glad to see the immigrants arrive. In fact, the Minnesota State Board of Immigration had aggressively advertised the many virtues of its state in order to establish immigrant colonies. So aggressive that they had even persuaded the railroads to lower their fares to the immigrants to make it easier for them to get there. As a result of this effort, by 1883, St. Paul's population had increased from 12,976 to 41,473. Along with this influx of immigration came what St. Paul had hoped for, a great building boom that changed the face of the city, along with lots of workers to build the railroads and farmers to till the land. It's understandable that immigrants felt a need to settle among their own as they faced a new land and language. This need drew them together in distinctive German neighborhoods. It was not uncommon to hear polka music and see people dancing at festivals. Some of the German Catholic families settled around Assumption and St. Agnes schools and churches. These were parochial schools where English was taught as a special subject. The public schools started the use of bilingualism to attract German children to their schools. On February 20th, 1884, Simon and Genevieve contacted Jacob Mainzer, General and Special Power of Attorney in St. Paul, to have him draw up this legal document. It stated, Simon and Genevieve were now living in St. Paul, Minnesota, and they were giving John Erhardt, house number 5, in the community of Wetteren, Bohemia, Austria, the power of attorney in all of their affairs. He was to see that Franz and Herafina Wagner, Anna's parents, sent them the 300 gulden owed. On receipt of that note, Simon and Genevieve would send them a receipt showing the contract that both families had signed in 1882 had been fulfilled. Anna was now 14 and Johann was 20. There is an additional document that we have from St. Paul. Unfortunately, 3 of the dates have been destroyed that could tell us exactly when Johann and Anna arrived in New York and some insight as to how long they were in St. Paul. The document reads as follows. On October something, 18 something, Johann Maier personally appeared before the clerk of the Supreme Court in Minnesota, being a court of state of record, and made oath he was born in Germany in about the year 1863, and that he immigrated to the United States and landed in the port of New York in or about the month of August in the year something. That it is bona fide his intention to become a citizen of the United States and renounce forever his allegiance and fidelity to any foreign prince, state, or sovereignty, whatever, and particularly the European Germany, where he is a subject. Johann Maier, subscribed and sworn to me this day of October something, 1880 something. Open paradise, eternally blue sky, the radiant sun about the great uncultivated, uninhibited land, tempting tropical fruits, wild animals, and golden freedom. Texas became the land of my dreams. These are the words of a Texas immigrant. Simon, Genevieve, Johann, and Anna arrived in Moulton in the late 1880s. A lot had taken place in this community by then. There was an old Moulton which had 200 residents, a boarding school, cotton gin, general store, and post office, among other attractions. But when the railroad built its tracks to the east, many of the businessmen began moving their stores closer to the tracks. Soon a depot and cattle pens were built, and New Moulton became the economic center for the area. New Moulton was thriving, and to add to that growth were several hundred German and Czech settlers. Soon after the new settlers' arrival, they expressed a desire to have their own church to reflect their own religious traditions. 5.5 acres on a hill overlooking the new settlement had been donated. Other Catholics and Protestants alike gave their financial and moral support to help make their dreams come true. Most residents lived in rural areas surrounding Moulton. There were 1- and 2-room schools scattered throughout the countryside so children wouldn't have very far to go. When they needed to sell their cotton, beef, or purchase items from the general store, they came into the bustling city. 2 of these settlers were Simon and Genevieve Meyer. Now, in their late 40s, they finally found what they were looking for in this little town.
Keep rolling along. Deep in my heart is a song.
Anna was now 20 years old, and Johann was 26. They fell in love and married in 1890. Like most young couples of this era, they immediately started having a family. Their family would grow to include 12 children. With the birth of these children came the new spelling of their parents' last name, from M-A-I-E-R to M-E-Y-E-R. This is how we recognize it today. Anna and Johann's 12 children were Mary, born 1891, John, born 1892, Frank in 1894, Joe, 1896, Anton, 1898, Louis, 1900, Teresa, 1901, William, Bill, 1904, Anna, 1907, Emil, 1909, Henry, 1910, and Leo, 1912. Until recently, we didn't know about their ninth child, Anna. Her birth certificate was discovered during our research of the family history. Mary, Anna, Emil, and Henry did not marry and had no children. They are also the only 4 of the 12 children that we have no photographs of. Anton Maier married Ottilie Buchek on February the 12th, 1898. They didn't have any children. I have fond memories of Aunt Tilly. I saw her just about every day at the school cafeteria. She worked there for many years. John Maier married Evelyn Parker Sherry. Evelyn's first husband, Smith Sherry, died in 1917 of spotted mountain fever, leaving her with their 3-month-old son, Buck. John and Evie had 6 children. Harry and Gladys, twins, born 1924. John Clyde, born 1926. Teresa Marjorie, 1927. Robert Samuel, 1930. Doris Elizabeth Ann, Betty, 1933.
Well, let me say this about John L. Maier. He was a crippled person. He had curvature of the spine, he had a hump back, and he had a pigeon breast. He was about 5'3", something like that. And he evidently had fallen off a haystack or a wagon or something, and either on his head or on his tailbone, which jammed his spine and caused him to grow just like that. And the man never could lay on his stomach, he never laid on his back. I get emotional about this. People teased him all his life. They called him Lade because he was mostly Lades, and but he was a smart man.
He was.
He could figure, go like out there. He's a cattle buyer. He raised cattle.
Well, he was a land surveyor too. Way back during the Depression, he surveyed land.
Yeah, well, he did a lot of things. He also worked in pits to build roads. But anyway, to get back to his physical attributes, he was a very crippled person, but he was one of the best cowboys in the country. He never let that bother him. He belonged to the Lions Club, belonged to the Chamber of Commerce, secretary, a number of different things. He had about a 3rd grade education. And he got married to our mother, Eddie.
He rented land, he leased land and bought the cattle and put them on there. Then he had a slaughterhouse up there at Grandpa Myers, and he did his own slaughtering, and he did his own butchering, and he did his own selling, and everything. And it was during the Depression, and he let people he fed the people a molten until he could not feed the people a molten anymore, because he couldn't pay his rent without bringing any money in. And I remember when we were big kids that he took all of his books and burnt them because he said no, nobody owed him anything, and nobody ever paid him anything. And
I remember Mother trying to help Grandma Meyer before she died.
he was really
They still have time to redeem themselves.
We're trying, sir. We're
See,
trying.
Uncle Sam, what was it like for you to be one of the youngest ones?
Well,
terrible.
Oh my God.
they starved me to death and they worked me to death, and
Made him work hard.
I didn't get to learn anything. And
Sam,
at that time, the only good part about it, I did have curly hair.
I want to tell you what, Morgie and I
They run their hand through my hair, you know, all the time.
We spoiled him right. Well, I want to tell you now, and tell on myself and Daddy. When I was young and could see, I'd go down to the pond, and Betty would sit by the pond, and I'd take that .22 rifle and I'd shoot those bullfrogs between the eyes and kill them, and then we would take them back to the house. When they got nothing, we would cook them and eat them.
And Betty was a very strong, determined person.
She was.
Very strong. She could do anything. I want to tell you how we got where we are today. It's because of my mother.
Yes.
That's right. That's true.
She took us every night. She marched us around the table about this size with that lamp, Margie, you know, that tall lamp.
Red lamp.
And she set that lamp right in the middle of that table. She put each one of us around that table. We had to study those books. I don't care if we knew them, if we didn't know them, or whatever. And she would go from one to the other. If you need help, you'd say, I need help. She would sit down and she would help us with whatever we needed help with.
She would help us write essays in high school.
That's right.
And she had
She would tell us stories. She would have 8th grade. She went through 8th grade. She would tell us stories and help us write those stories and everything. And I mean, that's what you did. You didn't say, "Can I?" Yeah, she had her gold wedding band. She'd leave knots on your head if you didn't do it. But you got that was a given. You got around that table every night.
And you passed.
And you passed. And Clyde was only 5 years old, and Terry and I were 7. Starting to school, and he wanted to go with us. The teacher said let him come because he was the same size we were. So he came, but he would go to sleep every night. He'd be so tired, and she'd be propping him up, and she would walk him halfway to school, spelling with his spelling every day, so that he would make 100 in spelling.
Just back to Clyde, he's probably one of the kindest of the whole group.
Yes.
And most generous.
Next to me.
Probably the most smart.
He is.
I'll agree.
We were over in China one night at a dance, because Clyde and I, Harry Ron left us on the farm.
Yes.
He got out of the deal.
Real fast.
Anyway, we was over China one night when, and this guy didn't have enough sense. He started picking on us, and he got too close to Clyde, and Clyde just picked him up and bounced him off the hood of a car. He ran on the other side, and he never stopped running. He just kept on.
Frank Meyer married Dina Moeller. They had one child, Dorothy, born in 1927.
He was in the Army for about a year, I think. He was a cook. He never got out of San Antonio. This was the first World War.
Food was too good.
I don't know.
It was too good.
I have a menu of their Thanksgiving dinner. If I didn't throw it away, but I did have it. And, well, they got married, I think, in 1918 or 1919. I was born about 9 years later.
Oh.
And, of course, I was the last child because my mother had a hard time. Well, I know whenever we would go to Grandma's,
Sunday.
just about, we would have these things we called butter horns, is what they're called now, I guess. Sort of like a croissant, but it's not the same. And she'd have homemade cheese, and that was delicious. Caraway seed.
Fill a whole table.
Yeah, and we'd go over for Christmas dinners usually. And I always remember her standing by the table and saying the prayer before meals.
Yes.
The one thing I'd like to say is that I now live about 3.5 miles from the place that I was born. So I'm in the same country all my life.
Yes.
And hopefully I'll die there. See, the first, second grade I went to Nickel, rode a horse. And then I went to the sister school because I had to make my first communion, my confirmation. So after the 3rd and 4th grade, I went back to Nickel, rode a horse again, through the 7th grade. Then I went to, and at that time, I rode a horse also. After that, that was the year that they omitted the 8th grade, and we went from 7th grade to 9th grade. That was the last year.
Joe married Frances Mark of Flatonia, Texas. The two of them boarded a train to San Antonio for their honeymoon. They had one child, Eugene James, born 1929. Joe became very ill about the time Gene was born. He was in and out of VA hospitals for 7 years. He died of tuberculosis in Kerrville, Texas in 1936. Jean married Elizabeth Partnevy on February the 15th, 1958 in Phoenix, Arizona. They had 4 children: Libby, born in 1959, Francis, born in 1961, Stanley, 1962, Curtis, 1963. After Jean and Elizabeth's marriage, they stayed in Arizona and raised their family. That family has grown to include 7 grandchildren. Louis married Agnes Schockerell. They had 1 child. Alvin was born 1925.
We got married in November, and then in January the 3rd, I was 18.
Okay.
Yeah, 18.
Okay. And
19, I want to say, 19. yeah.
and then you settled. You
Yeah.
as a young married couple, you lived here in Moulton.
Uh-huh.
And where did y'all live?
Out in the country.
Now, was that the Meyer homestead, or?
The first year we lived in that house where Anton, they built that house.
What about you, Alvin? Do you remember anything about your grandparents?
Well, coming up here to the house
Easters
over
or-
here, yeah.
What do you remember?
I'll be darned, that's a good question.
How about with your
Going
cousins?
down Sundays
Right. We've heard that.
and having lunch, I guess, like the rest of it. Wait for the lunchtime. And playing with, like with your dad and Clyde and Sam and all them. Mostly
Dorothy Meyer, too?
with Dorothy, yeah. And, well, Billy was over there.
Now, you said that Simon Meyer lived with who as he got older? Who did he live with? Weren't
With
you
his
saying?
son, John.
Okay, that was his only son.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Simon?
Didn't he just have John who married Anna?
That's right.
Okay. So Simon, as he grew older, was an older man. He lived with his son John, and you said which house did they live in?
In that 2-story house,
Okay.
what we lived in.
And he had his own.
He had a little room built on.
Now, how did you get the nickname Sonny? Sonny Meyer.
I don't know,
I
did you
guess
give it
we
to him?
just started off when he was a baby, we called him Sonny.
Because he was so sweet. And
So y'all did go to dance with Mom?
Oh yeah, dance, we went
Well, sure
to
you
some
did.
dances.
Was he
Went
good
as
dancer?
far as, outside Flatonia where we went. Gus Fisbeck and all of them.
Amos Yalufka?
Emil Yalufka and Hugo Fisbeck and Pauline, a whole bunch of them.
Gus Fisbeck?
Anton and Tiller.
Now, how did y'all go? In your Model T or?
Yeah.
Model T, Model A, whatever.
Always a whole bunch, about 6 of them in the car.
Teresa married Frank Albright. They had 2 children, Herbert and Pauline. Herbert married Josie Lee Petrick. They didn't have any children. Pauline married Roman Diersky. They had 5 children, Carol, William, Ronald, Joan, Judy. Even though there were no photographs and very little information available on this family, we do know that Pauline and some of her children live in Hallettsville at this time. We also know that Pauline is a grandmother. Bill married Hattie Darslak. They had 1 child, William Bill Jr., born 1933.
I met him at a party. We used to have those play parties, and that's where we met. And that's where we got acquainted and dated for 3 years and finally married.
He had feedlots. He had the first feedlot in this whole area. And the reason he had the feedlot
is because in those days there were no auction places where you could go buy cattle. And in the meat market, you have to have a source of meat. And the roads were all muddy around here, and if you went through a rainy spell, no cattle were available. And so you ran into a problem: what will we butcher, what will we sell? So he decided to have his own feedlots, and he started the feedlot business, and everyone told him, "You're crazy, you can't be feeding cattle feed and make money," but he did. And he shipped a lot of cattle to San Antonio, but he had the first feedlot in the whole area, yes. So he had a feedlot, he was in the meat market, he was ranching, he did many, many things. But not a farmer. He didn't like farming. Everybody had a portion of the cemetery to stake their horse in, and that was something. And just recently, the relatives, when we went over there with him the last time, they had letters from my grandmother telling how these children rode their horse to school. And for my father, we had to ride a horse to school. Oh. And but for those people in Europe, they thought that was great. These people have their own horse to ride to school. They thought that was really beyond anything. They showed all their friends the letter. Grandma Meyer, at Easter, everybody came, and she had eggs everywhere, and all the kids, she had an Easter egg hunt for all of us, and we all looked forward to that. That was nice. And being one of the smaller ones, you know, they would all play with me, and they had an old buggy, and Sammy and Clyde, they would pull me in the buggy, and that was great. I had a good time up there. That was nice. And Dorothy and Alvin, they were a little younger than the rest, but older than I, and they would play with me up there and pull me in the buggy. And she had a washing machine that you know, the agitator, but you have to do it by hand. It was made out of wood, and I would instruct them. They would do that, and then the next year came, and I was shocked. Alvin and Dorothy didn't want to play anymore. They just wanted to sit in the porch and talk. And I couldn't figure out what happened.
They grew up?
Yes.
Leo married Leona Seidenberger. They had one child, Robert, born in 1940.
We got married in 37.
And where did you get married?
In China. And boy, it was a rough day that day. We had snow and we had sleet. We had, it was terrible.
What month was it?
November 22nd.
Oh, so you were in
Snow. Snow. We really had some bad weather that day.
I made a comment earlier, Mom, when I saw your wedding picture. Leo was so handsome.
He was a fisherman. Every chance he got, he wanted to go down to the coast and fish. And well, before we were married, he was up in Fort Davis. And then after he was a barber so long, he said, "My son's not going to be a barber. That's too hard work."
Mom, talk about you going to Texas A&M.
No. We don't want to go.
Just like your mom and your dad wanted you to do, I'm sure.
Short stint.
He didn't graduate from Texas A&M, but he started there.
Are you through?
No.
No, actually, I wound up going to the University of Texas and getting a degree in petroleum engineering. So I did not have to be a barber.
You were still in oil, though.
Yeah. Different sort of deal.
Dumped them in the kitchen.
That's about the only thing I ever remember about Angleton is going in the kitchen full of frogs one night that got out of the bag.
But they got under the refrigerator.
Well, I had to be 2 years old or 3 years old at the time, but I remember frogs everywhere, yeah.
That's what you are. Unforgettable, though near or far. Like a song of love that clings to me. How the thought of you does things to me. Never before has someone been more unforgettable in every way. And forevermore, that's how you'll stay. That's why, darling, it's incredible that someone so unforgettable thinks that I am unforgettable too. Unforgettable in every way, and forevermore, that's how you'll stay. That's why, darling, it's incredible that someone so unforgettable thinks that I am unforgettable too.
must remember this. A kiss is still a kiss. A sigh is just a sigh. The fundamental things apply as time goes by. And when two lovers woo, they still say, I love you. On that you can rely. No matter what the future brings as time goes by. Moonlight and love songs never out of date. Hearts full of passion, jealousy and hate. Woman needs man, and man must have his mate. That no one can deny. It's still the same old story, a fight for love and glory, a case of do or die. The world will always welcome lovers as time goes by. The world will always welcome lovers as time goes by.
I remember the days of just keeping time, of hanging around in sleepy towns forever. Back roads empty for miles. Well, you can't have a dream and cut it to fit. But when I saw you, I knew we'd go together, like a wink and a smile. Leave your old jalopy by the railroad track. We'll get a hip double dip, tip-toppy two-seat Pontiac. So you can rev her up, don't go slow. It's only green lights and all right. Let's go together with a wink and a smile. Give me a wink and a smile. We go together like a wink and a smile.
Look at us. After all these years together, look at us. After all that we've been through, look at you, still pretty as a picture. Look at me, still crazy over you. Look at us, still believing in forever. And if you wanna see how true love should be, then just look at us. In 100 years from now, I know without a doubt, they'll all look back and wonder how we made it all work out. Chances are we'll go down in history.
Give me a kiss to build a dream on, and my imagination will thrive upon that kiss. Sweetheart, I ask no more than this, a kiss to build a dream on. Give me a kiss before you leave me, and my imagination will feed my hungry heart. Leave me one thing before we part, a kiss to build a dream on. When I'm alone with my fancies, I'll be with you, weaving romances, making believe they're true. Oh, give me your lips for just a moment, and my imagination will make that moment live. Give me what you alone can give, a kiss to build a dream on. When I'm alone with my fancies, I'll be with you, weaving romances.
the very thought of you, and I forget to do the little ordinary things that everyone ought to do. I'm living in a kind of daydream. I'm happy as a king, and foolish though it may seem to me, that's everything. The mere idea of you, the longing here for you. You'll never know how slow the moments go till I'm near to you. I see your face in every flower, your eyes in stars above. It's just the thought of you, the very thought of you, my love.
It's so important to make someone happy. Make just one someone happy. Make just one heart-to-heart you. You sing to one smile that cheers you, one face that lights when it nears you, one girl you're everything to. Fame, if you win it, comes and goes in a minute. Where's the real stuff in life to cling to? Love is the answer. Someone to love is the answer. Once you've found her, build your world around her. Make someone happy. Make just one someone happy, and you will be happy too.
A thrill